Hi, my name is Victoria. I'm a child psychiatrist, a parent coach, and I'm also a mum. And I'm doing a series of videos all about mental health in kids. And today I'm going to talk about whether it really is all the parents' fault, because I know that a lot of parents feel really worried about it. And I know certainly when I tell people that I'm a child psychiatrist, they sort of wonder if I'm watching what they're doing with their kids or if I'm going to tell them off for doing things wrong. And I really wanted to be open about the kinds of things that professionals think about parenting and, what I would say if someone asked me, well, is it really all the parents' fault? Why do we always get blamed for everything? If you do like my videos, please do subscribe to my YouTube channel or like my Facebook page because I always put all my videos out here every week and my new blog posts as well. And if you want something a little bit extra, there's always something in the emails that I send out weekly to my email list where I have an extra hint or tip or I add an extra free video or something like that. So if you would like that, I'll put the link in the description so you can subscribe to it. Otherwise, please stay tuned and I'll tell you what I think about whether parents are really to blame for everything that happens to their kids. I know that a lot of parents I speak to, especially in a professional capacity, are really worried that we're going to point the finger at them and say, you've done it all wrong. It's all your fault that your child has mental health difficulties. But I think it's actually much, much more complex, and most professionals will understand that. Most professionals understand that it's not just about what the parents do and don't do. Of course, the way we parent is very much linked to the way that we were parented before, and that will be our natural state is to parent how we were parented when we were little. And if our parents did fantastic jobs, then great, we'll probably make great parents ourselves. But actually, if our parents struggled with their parenting, then we're likely to repeat their mistakes, really, unless we become very aware of what happened to us and make very conscious decisions to educate ourselves and to do things differently. And even that can still be quite difficult. So, some of what we do is really linked to what we have experienced. And I think that's one of the reasons it's really important to hold that in mind and not always guilt trip yourself, wondering, why you do the things that you do. I think the thing you can really do there is think, okay, well, I don't want a parent like that. I need to get a little bit more knowledge and a bit more understanding about how to do things the way that I want to do them, because though people think that parenting just comes naturally, actually what comes naturally is what we were exposed to as children, and if that's not what you would like to do, then it does have to be something a little bit more thought through and a little bit more conscious. I mean, the second thing that's really important to understand is parenting interacts with a lot of other things like genes, the environment the child is brought up in, all kinds of things that we have much less control over. And I think that's probably why there is such an emphasis on parenting, is because that is actually something that can be changed, especially with knowing a little bit more and making conscious decisions to change things. Whereas some things, like the genes you inherit, there's very little you can do about that. And what we know about mental health is there isn't just one big thing that causes something. There's usually lots and lots of different things. And in the Team Mental Health course that I'm putting out in a few weeks' time, I actually talk about the way that we as professionals think about it. So we think about formulations, we think about all the different bits that contribute to mental health illness. And yes, parenting might be one of those things, but it's certainly not the only thing. I've certainly never seen a child where I've said, well, that's it, it's just the parents' fault. Nothing else at all has been at work here. There's always lots of different factors that add up together. But unfortunately, sometimes those factors are not things that anyone can do anything about. Whereas with the parenting, at least we can try and work on that. And that's probably why it feels that there's such a focus on it. What we also know is that the brain that a child has can be very different. So some children, even in the same family, can be born really quite sensitive to very small things. So some children will be very sensitive to little mismatches. So if you're not perfectly attuned to them, that can affect their development and affect whether they go on to develop mental health difficulty. Whereas with other children, they can really deal with quite big things that go wrong for them and it doesn't seem to affect them. We don't know why that happens. We just know that some brains do seem to be a bit more primed to things not being perfect essentially in their environment and the way that the parents interact with them. And of course, as a parent, you never know what sort of child you're going to get. You don't know whether they're going to be extremely sensitive or whether actually they'll be able to deal with quite a lot of leeway when it comes to how sensitive your parenting is. So I do think in some ways it is quite unfair, especially if you do end up with a child who is extremely sensitive and for whatever reason it's been difficult to be very sensitive to them early on in their lives. That can have much bigger effects for that particular child than it would for another child, and it's just one of those things that unfortunately does contribute to mental health difficulties. So, kind of, what can you really do? Well, I think the most important thing is not to go down a big guilt spiral, because guilt spirals really don't help anyone. It doesn't help you be a better parent, it doesn't help your child feel better, and often it just ends up in a big cycle of sort of shame and everyone feeling terrible, and child, especially if they're a bit older and aware of how you're feeling, might feel like almost a burden to you, or like you blame yourself because of them, and it becomes really quite complex. So if you are very prone to feeling guilty as a parent, I would say actually just use that energy to get to know more about what matters in parenting, to get to understand better what things work, what things don't work, and why there are these differences in how children react. Just use that energy to know more and to experiment with what you do. I think it's often important to just experiment with different things and see what works and see what doesn't. And certainly when we treat families, we often don't know exactly what the right answer is, but we'll ask them to try different things to see if the child responds differently, if they get better because of a different approach. So being able to explore different things to expand your knowledge is where your energy needs to be going, not beating yourself up. And especially if your child is a bit older and you're worried about what you did earlier on in their life or what experiences they have, there is always time to heal, and it's really important that you spend your energy on changing what's happening right now, on getting them the right support, on getting yourself knowledgeable about what can be done rather than spending it on feeling guilty and upset. So hopefully you found this video helpful. As I said, if you do like my videos, please do subscribe. I do put out a weekly video or blog article nowadays, so keep up to date with what's happening.